Thank you so much for joining us for our free New South Wales Thursday webinar. I'm Nikki Jovicic from LookUpStrata, and I'm also the Managing Director of Towbody Corporate, and I'm your host today. We're here to discuss a topic that's crucial for every strata owner in New South Wales, ensuring transparency and a fair process when it comes to your strata manager's contract renewal. We'd like to start by acknowledging the tremendous work done by the vast majority of strata managers in New South Wales and throughout Australia. We acknowledge that strata managers are dedicated professionals who play a vital role in the smooth operation of strata schemes. They work tirelessly to support owners' corporations and uphold ethical standards, and their commitment helps create well-managed and harmonious communities. And this webinar is certainly not intended to reflect on their excellent contributions. Instead, in the spirit of continuous improvement and fostering a robust industry, we're focusing today on specific areas where processes can be strengthened. So by shedding light on these aspects, we believe we can empower owners to make the most informed decisions and ensure their owners' corporation receives the best possible value and service. So ultimately, this conversation aims to foster an even more transparent and accountable environment, which benefits everyone. So that's owners, committee members, and indeed the many ethical strata managers who consistently operate with integrity and in line with the legislation. So today we're joined by Megan Parkins from Tender Advisory, who will share her insights on what owners need to watch out for as contract renewals approach. This session's designed to equip you with the knowledge and strategies to ensure due diligence is exercised and that your owners corporation can confidently choose a strata manager who adds value to your committee and your building. Now, remember, and this is really important, and we try to mention this regularly, as an owners corporation, you have the fundamental power to choose who you work with. Now, I'm going to say that again. So as owners corporations, you have the fundamental power to choose who you work with. This webinar aims to ensure that this critical choice is always made with your eyes wide open, with clarity, confidence, and in the best interest of your strata scheme. As LookUpStrata takes our transparency responsibility seriously regarding partnerships, I'd like to mention that Tender Advisory has been a sponsor of LookUpStrata. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, in addition to owning LookUpStrata, I own Towbody Corporate. So before we begin, I'd like to mention that the information in this session is not advice and should not be relied upon as advice. You should seek independent advice before acting on the information contained in the session. And we're very happy to welcome back Megan Parkins from Tender Advisory. So Megan commenced her career, her strata career in 2017 as a licensed strata manager. Megan has a strong foundation in the management requirements of owners corporations, building management committees, and all forms of associations. She holds a Class 2 strata management license and a certificate 4 in strata management, and was awarded 2019 SCA New South Wales Rising Star and 2020 SCA Australasia Rising Star. Megan has been drawn to co-founding Tender Advisory to help owners corporations regain their confidence and control over the management of their properties and their trust accounts. So welcome, Megan. Thanks so much for joining us again today.
Thank you, Nikki, for that lovely intro. And thank you, everyone, for jumping on with this session today. Just to echo Nikki's point in her introduction and to preface this session, this is in no way, the examples that we're going to discuss are in no way reflective of the majority of the management companies within the strata industry. These are examples of the minority who are acting unethically and creating false time pressure and so on and so forth to unfairly encourage retention of their management company with your owners corporation. So if there is ever an issue, then it's worth looking at it in quite a lot of detail and seeing if, one, there is suspicious activity from your strata manager, two, clear lack of accountability from your owners corporation. So inability to schedule meetings within the strata committee can impact a strata manager's ability to actually perform their duties. It's all about the shared accountability and the shared responsibility provider and the owners corporation within the industry. We're here today to talk about some examples of questionable strata manager retention strategies that we've identified during our time at Tender Advisory. The purpose of this webinar, as Nikki touched on, is to make owners aware of what they should be looking for and give them the right, to equip them with the right ability to navigate them if they do face these scenarios. So some strata managers use questionable retention strategies to retain control, which can cause a lot of strata owners to enter into rolling arrangements. So without realising, you may be going from 3-year term to 3-year term, which is New South Wales specific, because the motion is just rolling over onto your annual general meeting agenda, which removes the ability for you to approach the market in a competitive way. So there's a little bit about me there, but I won't run through that in too much detail. Nikki's already touched on my bio. We'll move on to the next one. So the first and most common strategy that we do see at tender advisory is management companies presenting their retention, so a reappointment motion, generally for the maximum term, as a mere formality. Sometimes this can be labelled by your strata manager as either a routine or an administrative motion, but there is nothing administrative about this. So the requirement under the legislation, especially in New South Wales, is that the appointment of a strata manager needs to go to a general meeting conducted by ordinary resolution. So no less than 50% of the owners in attendance have to approve that motion for their reappointment. So what this does is it removes the seriousness that is required for these sorts of motions, and it undermines the owner's rights to review or change agents. It also disregards the need for competitive benchmarking. So if you're only receiving one proposal from your incumbent management company without review before it goes onto your annual general meeting agenda, it can't be taken as competitive within the market because they haven't been involved in a process that requires them to put their best foot forward. They're generally on revised terms. The average increase rate at the moment is about 5% or CPI, which is similar. So without reviewing your original proposal details and approaching the market, you're not able to receive competitive proposals. So we've also seen, and again, just to reiterate, these are minute examples within the industry, but we have seen some management companies who are placing their own reappointment motions on meeting agendas without the consent or instruction of a strata committee member, a secretary, or even an owner. Now, in some even smaller examples, we have been privy to strata managers taking off motions for the appointment of a new company before the agenda is issued. So a strata manager is required to work with your strata committee, especially your secretary, before agendas are issued to make sure that they are reflective of the best interest of the owners corporation. If a strata manager is placing their own reappointment motion on an agenda without instructions or approval or in contravention of instructions of a strata committee, then that can't be seen as a professional approach to the reappointment of your building. It contradicts best practice and governance, and it also interferes with owner awareness. Now, if you on this call sit on a strata committee, you would be very aware that a lot of the information that is shared with you isn't shared with the owners corporation, not because there is a desire to restrict the information necessarily from the committee's perspective, but because it's clunky, it's dense, and that's what you're appointed to do. Now, if a strata manager pops a motion on without consulting with the strata committee, then the owners receive that agenda and they would take it as the strata committee and the strata manager working together. That's not always the case. So in order to navigate around this or mitigate that sort of confusion, strata committees need to proactively engage their owners corporation. You can do this by way of ensuring that all minutes and agendas are shared by the strata manager, or issuing a chairperson's update or a secretary's update or a treasurer's update, whichever is necessary. And this goes for all information to your owners corporation on a regular basis. So we are also seeing, and this is an important one because it can be, as I touched on earlier, it can be the result of both deliberate tactic and dysfunction within a committee, whatever the issue is. But delaying meeting dates, some managers are delaying or failing to schedule AGMs to create false time pressure and limit options. In the same breath, if a strata committee is unable to schedule an AGM date or even regular meeting dates, strata committee meeting dates, then this can impact the ability of the owners corporation to receive competitive quoting and have time for evaluation. If it is the strata manager who is doing so, or if there is a dysfunctional member in your strata committee, it could potentially be in breach of Section 19 of the Strata Schemes Management Act, which states that meetings must be held within 14 days of a qualified request. Now, the details of what constitutes a qualified request are contained within the Act. I won't go into those today because they're quite dense and repetitive. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Again, this is a very minute example. We have seen letters being published from management companies who are having performance issues which aim to emotionally manipulate strata committee members. So the letters appeal for sympathy or create fear. So we've seen things to the grain of, this will in fact impact the financial position of your individual strata manager for remuneration qualities, which is not the concern of a strata committee. The concern of a strata committee with a strata management company is that they are performing their duties, that they are communicating clearly, that they are addressing all of your concerns in a prompt manner, or they create fear. So to use a specific example of if you have a major project in operation and the strata manager is handling that, we've seen letters to the effect that you will lose the data that we have, the management cycle that we have. You will have to redo this with a complete new manager to create fear, create false pressure, and make strata committees avoidant of reviewing and reappointing a new company. These kinds of letters completely disregard professionalism. It's not an emotional relationship that you have with your strata manager. It is a professional relationship. It is a service provider. And they also lack performance or metrics or facts. So if there are performance issues, you should always allow your strata manager to review and respond. So list the problems that you're having, give them an appropriate amount of time to address the issues. If that fails, then you look at reappointment. This removes, the requirement for that and approaches it on an emotional basis entirely. They are also designed to create urgency or stimulate guilt. Again, as I touched on, you don't have an emotional relationship with your strata manager. You have a professional relationship with your strata manager. They are a service provider. Their services are dictated by the agreements that they have in place, and you should be using that to performance manage them. We also see very commonly the misrepresentation of the 90-day rules. Now, this is New South Wales specific, however, just to run through some bullet points. So Section 57 allows for up to a 3-month extension. You may have seen this by way of strata committee meeting motion. If the contract is approaching expiry and there's no time to review or call an AGM in that time. Section 58 can be blocked with a written notice. So there is an allowance if you have the maximum term contract with your strata manager, and no instructions have been given, then it will automatically roll over to make sure that your building stays managed and that you meet your compliance duties. This rule is meant for transition, not default extension. So this isn't to be relied on by the strata manager to automatically roll over and not be reviewed. It is only meant to protect you as the owner's corporation. So these are the things that you can do. So as the secretary of the strata committee, or even as the committee, you have the right to request copies of the agendas and the minutes be sent to you before they're published to the owners corporation in time for meetings. So if you implement clear quality controls and review your agendas early, so within the timeframe set by the Act, so that they can be published, you can help mitigate incorrect motions or misinformation going out to your owners corporation. Requesting as a standard copies of all communications sent to the owners be sent to the strata committee beforehand. So again, they can be reviewed and confirmed as accurate. Now, this is a really important one, setting AGM dates proactively. So during my time as a Strata manager, I recommended to my Strata committees that quarterly meetings and the AGM date be set at that first Strata committee meeting after the annual general meeting that they are appointed. Now, what this does is this allows for both the Strata committee and the Strata manager to proactively plan for the course of the next 12 months. This also helps you as the Strata committee to monitor and maintain control over expiry dates, your end of financial year and your budget forecast, and again, setting the AGM dates so that you can plan for any motions you need on that agenda. Knowing your rights under the Strata Schemes Management Act. Now, obviously, as a default, you will rely on your Strata manager to help you navigate this. In some instances, that's not appropriate, but there are fantastic resources available. You can always come to us. You can go to Nikki at LookUpStrata, or you can go to the OCN, the Owners Corporation Network. All of these have been set up to help owners navigate outside of adequate advice from their Strata managers. The last and final point is seeking comparative proposals and comparing service quality. Now, there needs to be a level of accountability from the Owners Corporation's perspective that you are contract managing on your own behalf. A Strata manager can't be expected to manage their own contract. It's a complete conflict of interest. So whether you appoint one person on the Strata committee or a subcommittee on the Strata committee or the entire Strata committee, somebody needs to be reviewing, monitoring, and managing that contract on behalf of your Owners Corporation. Go to the next, the final thoughts. So Strata managers are service providers, not fixtures. There is no requirement for you to stay with that Strata manager any longer than the term of your agreement. You have the right, you have the power, you have the responsibility to review, manage, and negotiate new contract terms. Your decisions should be based on value. Now, to specify, value is in terms of service delivery, not necessarily cost. So if a Strata committee or an owners corporation, while we acknowledge the economic pressure at the moment, if your end of line decision making is about dollar price, then you will receive poorer service from your Strata manager. It's an incredibly multifaceted role. It takes one company a lot of team structure and a lot of employees to get the support behind your individual manager to be able to manage your building. So you need to look at things like the Macquarie benchmark for how much it should cost per lot or whatever that is in your state. And then you need to compare comparatively between different companies on service delivery and inclusions within their base management and fixed fee model. But these decisions shouldn't be driven by pressure. So you need to, one, proactively plan and allow yourself enough time to review proposals, and two, open that line of communication with your Strata and say, look, we are aware of when our contract expires. We want to start the process now. We want to start the process early. And work with them. There's no reason to do sneaky things behind your Strata manager's back. They understand that they're a service provider. And setting your expectations and your intentions early will help you both navigate the situation. Ethics as well is transparency plus accountability and respect. So if you're not receiving these three things from your Strata manager, then it's time to start looking at alternate proposals and alternate companies. These are our contact details. If you ever do feel, I mean, obviously we provide a service, but we're also more than, you can ask any clients, we're more than happy to help out if you do just have a simple question on, is this right? Does this seem unethical? Does this seem fair? We also provide free audits if you think that there's an issue with your accounts on a simplistic form. Please contact us, whether it's by email or phone, and we're more than happy to assist you.
You mentioned one thing that really interested me, and that was KPIs for your Strata manager. And I was wondering, do many committees do this? And are they specific to the Owners Corporation, or could there be a standard KPI form that committees could use to keep an eye on what value their Strata manager is providing?
So there is currently no standard KPI form in the market, but there are, in saying that there are standard KPIs you can generate from the legislative requirements. So obviously within New South Wales, there's a very strict requirements around notice periods, and issue dates and all of those sorts of things. So it's very easy to generate simplistic KPIs. What we do as well is we meet with the Strata committee, we talk through bespoke KPIs. You know, some treasurers are more involved than others. So do you want your budget a month after the end of the financial year? Do you want your audits? All of those sorts of things. What you need to do as a first point of call is discuss in-house with your Strata committee. Everyone set their expectations with each other and then approach the Strata manager with a controlled and measurable set of KPIs so that they can respond.
So maybe if anyone in chat would like to comment on that, we'd really like to hear your thoughts around whether you've got some sort of process in place like that. Do you think it's too hard? Do you think it's confronting for your Strata managers? It'd be really good to get some feedback back on that if people in chat can put that in there.
Well, look, I will say it's always an awkward conversation when you're talking to any service provider, whether it's your gardener, whether it's your mechanic, whether it's even your doctor, and you think you're getting poor service. But at the end of the day, as we've touched on quite detailed, there is a level of owner accountability, of owners corporation accountability. You have the power to control your agreement, but only if you're willing to put the effort in that is required to do so. So you need to open that line of communication with your Strata manager. If, as I mentioned earlier, if they're not aware of what the issue is, they can't fix it. So you need to work together as a committee. And I know that's sometimes difficult because there's different personalities on a committee. You're all just owners. You've all got normal jobs. But you need to find a way to come together and, you know, consolidate your concerns so that you can give your service provider measurable qualities to respond to.
Okay, and it seems like quite a structured way to do that as well. I know you said it's a really hard conversation to have with your Strata manager, but it does provide some structure around that process and maybe makes it a little bit more objective and not as emotional when you're explaining the situation through. So yeah, I think it sounds like a great idea. Oh, sorry, KPIs, key performance indicators. I'm so sorry, I should have mentioned that. Yeah, very, very sorry. And I guess it's used in employment situations a lot where you're talking to employees about what they've achieved during the year. And one of the things that LookUpStrata is kind of looking at the moment is talking to committees more and talking to owners more about the fact that being an owner in a building's a little bit like being an owner in a business. And maybe if you look at the situation like that, and this is kind of moving towards that as well. So it's a great way to look at it. I really like the idea. All right, we'll go back to some of the questions that were sent in to us. So one of them is, our AGM is coming up. Almost certainly there will be a motion to reappoint the Strata manager. In my opinion, the Strata manager is rude, arrogant and incompetent. The manager is very friendly with one Strata committee person and friendly with the other two, and that more or less guarantees them a secure tenure because of the balance. Owners don't want to make waves. So I feel pretty much stuck with this incompetence. The management agreement renewal is always a 3-year contract. When I've voiced my concerns about the term of the agreement, the Strata manager just states that 3 years is standard practice. What is standard is 3 or 1 year standard. And how does an owner achieve a change in Strata management when the current manager has the support of the Strata committee?
Mm-hmm. So there is no standard term within Strata management. 3 years is the maximum term allowable under the legislation. So if there are performance issues with the current agent, a 12-month term, so a revised 12-month term and a performance management plan, as we've touched on in quite a lot of detail, with clear expectations and key performance indicators may be the appropriate step in reducing and or resolving conflict. But again, it sounds like that's from the perspective of an owner. This would require you to work with the Strata committee or work with a larger portion of other owners who share your concerns. So an owner has the right to request any motion on a general meeting agenda, but whether or not that's passed is dependent on how educated the rest of the owners are and how much they agree with the issues that you're facing. So you need to work, as Nikki just said, it's like being an owner in a business. If there's 3 business partners, 2 agree, 1 doesn't agree, Unfortunately, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But if you can help educate your other owners with the issues that you're experiencing, maybe they will resonate with that. That's the way forward. It's all about a collaborative approach in owners corporations.
We did a session with Chris Irons quite a while back now, but it was about lobbying in Strata, and it was titled "How to Get What You Want in Strata." But basically, it was how to work with other people within the building to gain support on ideas that you've got. So if you've got an idea, and particularly if you're not on the committee, so you don't have that committee vote at that point, but you'd like something to move ahead, you can there are strategies in place where you can work with other owners in the building to find out what they think, gain some support there, and then that might lead to change as well. Can an owner, not a strata committee nominee, volunteer to be a proxy vote scrutineer? What New South Wales laws cover collusive tendering and pecuniary interest declarations?
Mm-hmm. So, short answer, an owner would, to become a proxy at a strata committee meeting, would need to be appointed by a strata committee member. There is no such thing as a proxy vote scrutineer in New South Wales. It's not allowable under the Act. So failing that, if you are a concerned owner, then I would always encourage you to try and join the strata committee. I understand that it's a large dedication of your time and energy, but if there are things that are happening, again, it's your responsibility to be involved as an owner within that owner's corporation. Remember as well that while you might not be able to vote at strata committee meetings, owners are allowed to attend. They just must do so with with respect for the process that's being followed by the strata committee. So don't interject with any decisions that are being made. Don't derail the meeting. And if you do wish to speak to a motion or a particular matter, you would just need to request the consent of the chairperson. I'm not a lawyer, but in my experience, Schedule 2, Section 18 of the New South Wales Strata Schemes Management Act covers pecuniary interest declarations. Now, with respect to collusive tendering, it's not actually addressed directly under the Strata Schemes Management Act or the Strata Schemes Management Regulations. However, it does outline responsibilities for potential penalties related to strata management practices that could be vulnerable to things like this. So Section 102(1) of the New South Wales Strata Schemes Management Act talks through a requirement for an owner's corporation to obtain at least 2 independent quotations for proposed expenditure for an item that is more than the amount prescribed by the regs, and that amount is listed in Part 3, Section 25, and it is $30,000. So what that means is any works over $30,000 must be, the strata manager or the strata committee must obtain 2 independent quotations. So not 2 related entities giving 2 prices, 2 completely independent related, 2 completely unrelated entities.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And there are changes that are coming in. I mean, everyone in New South Wales is aware of this, hopefully, because we've been talking about a lot. We've got links everywhere and checklists and things. So do some of the changes that are coming in address some of these issues that we're speaking about today as well?
Yeah, so they address, it used to just be large owners corporations. Now it's all owners corporations must attend to those 2 independent quotes.
Okay,
So
wonderful.
it's broadened the spectrum of that section of the legislation.
Okay. And just as a reminder for everyone, that's just over a week away. So it's the 1st of July that's coming in. So yeah, just so that you know. When comparing strata management proposals, it can be a minefield to analyse the A, B, C, D, etc. schedules. Due to the extensive list of some contracts, it can be quite difficult to clearly identify which areas attract extra charges, and also arrangements for meeting charges, example by the hour or per 15-minute increments, would not be known by the owners, only the people who sign the management agency agreement. Is there easier way to navigate charges when one can't see a simple financial report where extras can be more easily identified?
Okay, so because of the multifaceted nature of strata management as a service, most companies will provide you proposals on a pay-as-you-go model. So what that means is you get your compulsory requirements within your base management, and then everything else over and above, any ifs, ands, and buts are in pay-as-you-go. So that's your additional charges or Schedule Bs, or as some media outlets have called it, phantom fees. Now, this isn't necessarily that strata management companies doing the wrong thing or trying to act unethically. This is because there's no blanket set of services that matches every building. So no owner's corporation is exactly the same. Some people have more meetings, as I touched on earlier. Some treasurers like a little bit more of an in-depth service. But this is why they're commonly represented in multiple schedules. So the best way to achieve apples for apples comparison with proposals is by approaching the market. So when you go to a strata management company with a structured scope or specification for the services that you have deemed appropriate for your building. Now, what that does is it sets measurable expectations for both you and the tendering company. It gives them something to quote on rather than quoting on everything under the sun if and as required. So we work with committees and owners to produce what we call weighted measures, and we generate a bespoke and site-specific specification based on your annual requirements. This enables companies who do so as transparently and fulsomely as possible.
It sounds to me like you're flipping the conversation over a bit. So that puts the OC back in control of the conversation that's happening rather than the strata manager controlling the conversation with their schedule of fees. You're actually asking for certain things that you're interested in and asking them to report on that.
That's right, yeah. And it's also, that's about, as we touched on earlier, that shared accountability. If a strata manager doesn't know what you want, then they're going to quote on everything. So you need to tell them what your requirements are. How heavily do you want them involved in the budget process? Do you want to have quarterly meetings, quarterly strata committee meetings, plus your AGM? They need to understand the parameters around your management so that they can give you a transparent and fulsome proposal.
Excellent. All right. I like that idea. I think that's a great one. How can we prevent the compromised strata committee, which is in collusions with the strata manager, from continuing? The committee uses pre-meeting electronic voting to prevent discussion about renewing the strata manager and only offers an option for one company with only a 3-year term. The committee controls everything by blocking discussion, and most of the building's occupants want to avoid any perceived conflict. Will be stuck with this current contract until 2027. The chairperson stacks the AGM to maintain their position on the committee, then collaborates with the strata manager so they don't have to take any action, and it earns money for the strata manager. NCAT isn't an option because we will be charged legal fees and likely lose, as the chairperson is in the pocket of the strata manager, and the strata manager will lawyer up at our expense.
Okay, so without touching on the indication that there may be collusion, because I would need to know more details about the situation. In short, yourself or another owner or a group of owners would need to seek an alternate proposal. So approach the market on behalf of your owner's corporation, ask a strata manager to do so, and then you would need to request a general meeting for the consideration of the proposal. Now, we talked earlier about the sections of the Strata Schemes Management Act and the regulations that touch on the necessity to get 2 quotes for anything over $30,000. That extends to strata management. So if your contract is worth more than $30,000 annually, then your owner's corporation is required to receive at least 2 proposals from 2 independent companies. Now, as the appointment of a strata manager has to be resolved by way of ordinary resolution at a general meeting, the success of your motion would be dependent on the ability to engage the broader owners corporation in supporting the change. So as we've touched on throughout this, there is a requirement for you to collaborate with your owners corporation and, preferably with your strata committee. Now, a qualified request, as I touched on earlier, can be made to the owners corporation by the secretary, the strata committee, and or one or more of the owners with a total unit of entitlement of at least 1/4. So 25% of your total unit entitlement for the building. And the general meeting is required to be convened within 14 days. So what that means is if you can rally at least 1/4 of your owners corporation, if you believe your strata committee is acting outside of the best interest of the group, then you can convene a general meeting. You can request the convening of a general meeting. Now, I know that NCAT is not the preferable source, but they are the final stop. So if that meeting isn't called within 14 days, your next point of call would be to proceed to the tribunal.
Okay, thanks so much. And we just had a question on some clarification. So did I hear correctly? A non-member of the Strata Committee who is an owner can attend a Strata Committee meeting and receive copies of all documents provided to the Strata Committee?
Look, it would need, communication with your strata committee and, like I said, parameters around attendance being for observing. But yes, you have the right to attend a strata committee meeting as an owner and receive that documentation. Failing your ability to receive it via the secretary or the strata manager, you can also perform a search of the books and records of the owners corporation. Now, I think it's, I can't remember the exact amount listed in the act, but it's about $30, and you can attend to the office or an online portal and you can view the minutes that way.
How can small strata schemes in 4 units in Sydney increase their bargaining power when negotiating a strata management agreement, given that strata management agencies may consider the business of managing any small strata scheme to be relatively unimportant to them, and the agency isn't interested in considering changing any of their clauses in their agreement?
It is a really good question, and it's one that comes up a lot with us, but the simple answer is you're probably with the wrong agency. Now, you need to remember that a strata management company is a business at the end of the day. So some businesses within the strata management industry, they define their wheelhouse, and some have a wheelhouse that is the smaller strata schemes, up to 25 lots is their specialty, or they sit in the middle, or they sit in the large and the complicated ones. Now, if you are currently with a strata management company who operate mostly in the large and complicated market, they're receiving more remuneration from them on an annual basis. They will naturally and organically give them more attention from their organization. But if you're with a company who specializes in their smaller buildings, the 2-story walk-ups, the 4 owners, the ex-company title buildings, whatever it may be, then you will receive that level of care from that strata management company. So it's all about identifying the right fit within the market, which obviously is a difficult thing to do sometimes. But that's, where businesses like ours come in, or recommendations from somebody who lives in a similar sized building or something to that effect. So you need to do your research first and make sure you're in a relationship with the right kind of organization.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So how does a strata scheme begin to identify strata managing agencies that would willingly assign some of their better strata managers to small strata schemes? And I guess that comes down to what you've just responded with to
Yeah,
Megan, but did you have anything else to add to that?
it is difficult. I mean, you can also obviously comb through things like Google reviews, but I think everyone on the call knows that they're not always exactly reliable. Word of mouth is a great way to navigate that situation. Recommendations, or obviously companies like ours, if that's within your budget.
Okay, wonderful. Our strata manager rewrites the motions submitted. Our committee don't know or care and have their own agendas, but there is no recourse for this. While the Act says must, there are no consequences. What could you advise?
The secretary at the end of the day, or anyone else appointed by the strata committee, has the responsibility to review that documentation on behalf of the owners corporation and make sure it's accurate. So if it sounds like it's coming from an owner to me, if they believe that there are inaccuracies that are being published by the strata manager and they are in contravention of the legislation or the wishes of the owners corporation, the first point of call would be you would need to communicate with and seek the assistance of your strata committee. Failing that, your recourse would be the tribunal. But again, remember that the tribunal requires evidence. So again, without knowing specifics of the situation, you would need to make sure that your interpretation of what they are inaccurately recording is correct and can be evidenced before submitting to the tribunal.
Can you go over some of the clauses in a typical contract that are illegal, wrong, or just poor practice?
Look, it's difficult to say that. The standard contract within the industry is obviously the one that has been produced by the Strata Community of Australia, which has just undergone further amendment and submission. I can talk through one that we do see and have seen quite regularly recently, is a termination clause requiring, over industry standard notice period. Then there's misrepresentation of that back to the committee, whether or not that notice period starts at the end of expiry, from the date of the meeting, from the date of physical notice. So anything that looks vague or doesn't have measurable qualities should be flagged by you as the Strata Committee as potentially, either in contravention of the Act or questionably weighted toward the service provider rather than your owner's corporation. But it's really difficult to talk through that, one, because we have to protect our clients, and two, just because I would need to see the specific example.
Where does fair trading come in to deal with the breaches of the Act?
Yeah. So the tribunal, so the New South Wales Civil and Administrative Tribunal deals with the breaches of the Act. So anything that, again, can be evidence that you believe is happening, whether it's, I can't think of an example, a bylaw's not being appropriately managed, or, inaccuracies in agenda, that would need to go to the tribunal as a submission. Fair trading would deal with breaches of contract. So the tribunal isn't necessarily equipped to deal with the contract side of things is much greater. Obviously, that's a different piece of legislation. So there's contract law, there's the Unfair Contracts Act, and then there's the Department of Fair Trading. The tribunal will deal with the breaches of either the legislation or your registered documentation. So your bylaws, your community management statement, your building management statement, and those sorts of things.
As we come up to the end of the session, we always like to go back to our presenters and just ask if you've got anything that you'd like to wrap up with, or anything that you'd like to leave us with, some final thoughts.
We've touched on a lot today about owner accountability and owners corporation accountability. Now, that extends to understanding the roles of your strata committee members and the limitations that they have. Now, it's very easy to blame the group of people, or to seek recourse via the group of people who represent you, who deal with the strata manager on a daily basis, but they might also be being misguided and misinformed. Now, remember that they are just people within your owners corporation who have taken the time out of their personal lives to act on your behalf. If you would like to be more involved as an owner, you should be putting your hand up at each annual general meeting to join the strata committee. That's just my final thought on that one.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Megan. And I know sometimes we provide that information to some of our owners out there, and they try to get, there's situations where owners try to get on the committee, and the committee is kind of blocked, and it's very hard to do that. And then that's when that lobbying and talking to other owners and sort of getting the building involved and trying to create some sort of a movement within the building might come in handy as well.
It's all about harmonious coexistence in an owners corporation. That should be your your main goal, is to get along with your neighbours as best as you can.
That's it. And that committee's there to support you, and they're working for you essentially for free, for the owners in the building. So if you can really improve that relationship between the owners and the committee members, then that could work only in your favour as well. If you gained value from this video, please hit like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're looking for information about parking, strata insurance, defects and more, head over to lookupstrata.com.au or sign up to our free weekly newsletter via the link in the description box below.